This week, we're going to be taking a look at the powerful Grease the Groove method and how it can help you greatly improve your efficiency and proficiency with grind style calisthenics. Hello there, my name is Matt Schifferly. I'm an author of books like Smart Bodyweight Training and Fitness Independence, inventor and of course founder of the Red Delta Project, where we teach you how to get bigger and stronger with grind style calisthenics, leaner, healthier, and more fit with satisfying healthy eating strategies. So I get a lot of questions on this method called greasing the groove. As far as I know, this is a term coined by Pavel Tsatsouline, Dragon Door, Now Stronger First, kettlebell founder. Basically, this guy knows his strength training. He's the modern founding father of the kettlebell movement, and he coined this term because a lot of things with kettlebell training are very skill intensive. And in a traditional approach to exercise, as I covered in a previous podcast, we have this approach where we do an exercise really hard, really intense, and then we don't do it for several days after that. So we may only practice or train an exercise once, maybe twice a week in many cases. But when you're trying to improve your proficiency with kettlebell movements and other similar skill-based type exercise, once or twice a week probably isn't going to cut it, not by a long shot, because it's just like building any other skill that you can imagine, from playing an instrument or learning to speak another language. If you do it only sporadically, then it's very hard to get used to the activity and used to the neural demands that activity demands. And calisthenics is certainly no exception to this, because everything you do, even squats, push-ups, pull-ups, there's a lot of skill-based initiatives with all of these exercises. And don't let the whole dichotomy kind of throw you off a little bit. Sometimes when people watch YouTube videos, I see in the comments section of advanced leg exercises or handstand work, people say, oh, that's a skill-based exercise. I'm not interested in building my skills. I just want to get bigger and stronger. But this is a very detrimental attitude to have, because skill is the foundation of building muscle and strength. You will always be limited by how proficient you are in the activity, even if it's using something like a leg extension or an exercise, because there's still a skillful component in any sort of physical activity you do. Now, granted, yes, things that are more ground-based free weights like kettlebells, or things that have less support like progressive calisthenics may have, quote, a little bit more of a stability and a coordination component to it, therefore a little bit more of a skill component. That still doesn't change the formula. You will only build as much muscle and strength as you have of skill for proficiency in the exercise. So this is the conundrum that you now have, is how are you supposed to get good at something if you only practice it sporadically? So greasing the groove that Pavel came up with is this notion of practice the activity very frequently, maybe even many times every single day. And when I started to learn a little bit about kettlebells, I applied this for myself, because man, I could not get the kettlebell clean to save my life. I just practiced and practiced in class, could not make it work for me, because it's got the hip movement, you got to keep your back engaged, there's a lot of little details to it. So what I did was I applied the Grease the Groove method. I took a kettlebell, and I had them in my basement, my home gym at the time. What I did was I brought it up into my living room and put it right in my living room. And then every time I walked past it, or there was a commercial break watching TV, I'd get in some cleans. I'd practice a few cleans. And the movement that thwarted and made me struggle for months became halfway decent within a few days, because of that Grease the Groove method. So the bottom line is, if you're struggling to kind of get the handle of handstand or pull-up or whatever activity, Grease the Groove can make you more proficient a hell of a lot faster, and it could be applied to anything, any type of activity. I've heard it applied to deadlifts, kettlebell training, Olympic lifting, whatever. You're having trouble, Grease the Groove, practice it very often. Now, there's a few ways that we can do this. One is to set a clock to it. So you have a little alarm, or you simply look at the clock and say, every hour on the hour, I'm going to pop up into a handstand. That works pretty well. You can do something like I did with my kettlebell and have a situational sort of reminder, like you're struggling for pull-ups, for example. Put a doorway pull-up bar. Every time you walk out by that through the doorway, grab that pull-up bar, pull yourself up 1 rep. That adds up real fast. A buddy of mine years ago used to do this with his kicks in Taekwondo. Every time he walked down the hallway from his room when he was, younger and living at home, he would do side kicks down the hallway. And as a result, his side kick became a deadly weapon in the sparring ring. So you can do it that way, or you can simply do it a little bit more freeform and say, I'll do it as I feel like throughout the day, as kind of a little bit of a coffee break from work or something. Not really a lot of ways that you can mess up Grease the Groove, because it's meant to be kind of freeform, a little bit playful in nature. But there are a couple of ways that you can kind of use it to your detriment. One is to simply overthink it, where people say, okay, what's the routine, and what's the sets, and what's the reps? Just kind of practice it. It doesn't need to be a routine. It doesn't need to be a workout. It doesn't need to be something so structured. You are literally just messing around with it, having something that you're trying to play with. Second is they put too much effort into it and they turn it into a legitimate full-on workout. And the only reason why Grease the Groove can work is if you don't use it to a super high level of fatigue and exhaustion. Because remember, you don't need to recover from exercise. And people oftentimes are like, you can't do the same exercise every single day. Of course you can. You can do anything every single day because you don't need to recover from exercise or working out. You need to recover from fatigue. So the whole idea with Grease the Groove is you practice it frequently, but not with a high level of fatigue. So with me and those kettlebell cleans, I wasn't doing hundreds of reps at a time till I was getting blisters on my hand and huffing and puffing and really driving myself into the ground. I would literally get like 3, maybe 4 reps, put it down and go on with my day. So it's not supposed to be something that takes a lot of time and energy per side. That's how you can make it so frequent without beating up your body or having trouble doing it throughout the day. And that's, again, one of the advantages of calisthenics or like kettlebells, because you don't need to go to the gym. Imagine applying Grease the Groove to the equipment you can only have at a gym. You like drive to the gym to and from like 5-6 times a day. Very impractical. But of course, with bodyweight training, you can do that because you don't need a gym or fancy equipment to make it work. Other mistakes that I often see are where people will often just kind of go through the motions. Remember, there are 3 things that you need to make progress in almost anything in life. The first is awareness, and be more aware of what's going on. That's why everybody's got those Fitbits and trackers and stuff, is to bring more awareness of what you're actually doing. So when they first came out, people were like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing 10,000 steps a day or only 2,000 steps a day. They're getting more aware. This is where keeping like a diet journal can really come in handy as well. Because when you have a diet journal or a photo journal, as I've talked about in the past, you look at it and you go, whoa, and you become more aware of what you're doing. That's the first step. Second step is analysis. Analyze what you're doing. Now that you're more aware, you have the analysis and you think basically and contemplate, what are you doing? This is what I'm doing. This is how it relates to my goals. This is where it's hurting me. This is where it's helping me. You basically just kind of meditate on what you've become aware of. And then the third step that you need to have is an action plan. Those are the 3 A's: awareness, analysis, and action plan. So you plan, what are you going to do different next time? Now, you have to have all 3 of these with Grease the Groove in any form of training. And the reason why most people do not get the results they want is because they're lacking one of them. They either lack the awareness of what they're really doing. Usually they have very unstable habits. They have little awareness, analysis of it, like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Well, is it working for you? Is it beneficial? And they're like, man, I don't know. And they don't make a plan for next time. So when you're greasing the groove, take little mental notes or maybe even physical notes of, this is what I noticed. This is what helped. Like, oh, if I got my traps on a little bit more stable, keep my lats engaged, that clean got a lot easier. Okay, then you know what to work on next time. Then you know what to focus on And then you're like, okay, yeah, that's getting more in the groove. That's getting more proficient. And that's how you make Grease the Groove and any form of training work a lot better for you, especially when it comes to grind style calisthenics, because you get awareness, you analyze like crazy, and then you make an action plan. And you just repeat this for every single time you do an exercise. And that's how you make progress. Otherwise, without these three, you just stuck kind of spinning your wheels, doing the same thing all the time, hoping to get somewhere by just blatantly working your tail off. So that's Grease the Groove. It's not that complicated. It's nothing that you need to even do for very long. Remember, the point is to bring up something that you're kind of struggling with. Because when you're struggling with something, it's hard to get that momentum going. It's like pushing a train. It's really hard to get it moving. But once you get the momentum going and you've built up that proficiency, you don't need to practice it that much in order to maintain it. Remember, two of the most important and powerful things for your success, not only achieving it, but also maintaining it, are skillful proficiency and habit. You don't need to constantly work hard to achieve and maintain good results when it comes to health and fitness. In fact, excuse me, I've long been a believer that as you get better at this whole health and fitness thing, the results should be easier to acquire and maintain to a large degree. Now, of course, super elite level stuff like 2% body fat for a bodybuilding competition, you're not maintaining that. That's just going through hell on earth, no matter who you are. But when it comes to general health and fitness, this stuff is supposed to get easier over time, not harder. That's a big red flag with a lot of diet and workout programs, is if you feel like you're walking up a hill that's constantly getting steeper and more difficult, take that as a serious red flag that something needs to change, because diets and healthy eating and workouts should actually get easier to adhere to over time, not harder. So the Grease the Groove method helps you improve your skillful proficiency, and it helps you build the habit of becoming more aware of what you're doing. Because when it comes down to it, skills and habits will beat effort and hard work hands down any day of the week. If you take someone who has the best work ethic and they're like, I'm the hardest worker in the room and I can outwork anybody, if they don't have skills or the habits built up, they don't stand a ghost of a chance. But you take a lazy slob who's like, I'm just going to show up, punch the clock, and do the bare minimum, but they've got skill and they've got good habits built, they're going to destroy the hard worker every time. Because skill, like I said, is the foundation of your results. And if you apply 1 ounce of effort to a ton of skill, you're going to get way better results than if you apply a ton of effort, but you don't really have any skill or habits to it. So that, at the end of the day, is how it gets easier. Think of things that you had growing up, like riding a bicycle or playing an instrument. At first, it was ridiculously difficult and you had to work your tail off to do things like learn your multiplication tables. And it was very hard and you weren't very good at it. But the practice of going 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, saying your multiplication tables, you built your habit, you built your proficiency and your skill at it. So now you're like 5 times 5 is 25. You don't even have to think about it because you've got the skill, so it takes a fraction of the effort. And that's where Grease the Groove really shines. It builds your habits, builds your skills, so when you do your actual hardcore workouts like chest day, check out the video I posted on YouTube of my chest and tricep workout I did last week. When you do your dips, when you do your push-ups, when you do your squats, you're getting 1,000,000 times more effectiveness from every single rep because you have that skill built up, because you have those habits built up of tense your glutes. Every single squat builds up the habits because skill and habit wins, period. And when it's applied to basic skill-based exercises like in grind style calisthenics, you can't fail. So there are my thoughts. I'd love to know yours down below. If you're watching this here on YouTube, don't forget, check out my books on Amazon down below. This is the RDP podcast. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher. I'm also now on TuneIn Radio and, of course, Google Play, and I'm trying to get it on Spotify. I know some of you asked about it, but working on that, trying to make that happen. Please Like, share, subscribe. That sort of thing helps to bring this to be a lot more popular, increases the chances that I can get it on places like Spotify. And thank you very much. Some of the 5-star reviews have been pouring in. I greatly appreciate it, and all of the support for the Red Delta Project. I will talk to you guys next week. Till then, be fit, live free.